Hey guys, this is the MTG Noob here with,
Cybot again.
and in episode 7 of For the Noobs, we're going to talk about decks. In this episode, we will teach you how to import a deck, teach you how to build a deck, and maybe even give you a few helpful tips. So, Cybot, why don't you show everybody how to import a deck?
Alright, so maybe you've been on the Magic the Gathering website and you've noticed a little O icon in the articles where they show a deck list. If you just click on that icon, it'll download a text file for you. Save that text file somewhere where you will remember it because you're going to need it in a minute. Now return to the Magic Online Collection view and remember that Add Deck button we talked about? Click that button and you will see the Add and Import Decks prompt. Now just click the import button on this window and find the text file you just downloaded. It should name the new deck after the text file, but feel free to change it if you wish. It should also auto-detect the format, but feel free to change that also. Finally, you just need to select a deck box and click the OK button and you should have your new deck ready to go. If you don't have the cards for the deck, you'll see these little yellow slashes on it. And a new feature of the beta that comes in really handy when you're doing this, if you right click on any area in the deck building place, you can add all needed cards to your wish list so that you can go to the bots or trade with other people and filter by your wish list and automatically see the cards that you need to get for your new deck.
So now that everybody knows how to import the actual decks that they can take from the internet, from pros, from various websites, you could also make your own deck list in Notepad. You just have to put the number of cards and a space, and you can import it like that. I think the more commonly used is creating a deck yourself. So, Saibot, why don't you tell us a little bit about the filters or any extra little tips that you've come accustomed to using the beta?
We pulled this Gruul Aggro deck off the internet, so let's build that from scratch. It's a standard deck, so the first thing we're going to want to do is filter by the format, so we'll filter by standard. That'll show us all the cards currently legal and standard. It's a Gruul deck, so we'll filter to red and green. Once you add the color filter, you may notice that your collection is now separated into 3 categories. There's color identity, which is going to be all cards that have the color identity of both red and green, or red or green. There's also color independent. This is going to be any artifacts or lands that don't require specific colors. And the third category is color identity and other colors. This is going to be cards that have red and or green in their color identity somewhere, but they also have other colors in their color identity. But there is a neat trick in the new beta. Let's say there is a card that you want to be the centerpiece of your new deck. After applying your filter to find this card, you can right click on it and select Start a New Deck. Then it is just like starting a new deck, except for it will automatically be named after the card and it will try to choose the format it thinks you might want. So back to the deck we were building. When I start a new deck, the place I usually like to start is with my mana base. So let's go ahead and expand the type filter and select the land option. For the core types, they have identifying icons that make it easier to find the type that you're looking for. You could just drag the cards down to your deck, but most decks require play sets, and when it comes to your basic lands, you'll usually need 10 or more. Luckily, the beta has some handy shortcuts that you can use to add cards to your deck. You can find these by right-clicking on any card in your collection. For your basic lands, there will be an extra shortcut for adding 10 cards to your deck, but all cards will have shortcuts for adding 1 card to your deck or for adding 4 to your deck. If you don't currently own 4 copies of a card, the shortcut will add the maximum number that you own. But if your deck requires more copies than you currently own, you're going to have to drag the additional copies down to your deck manually. After you finish your deck, you can add all the cards that you're missing to the wish list like we talked about before. In addition to those shortcuts, there's also shortcuts for adding cards to your sideboard. You can add 1 or 4 to your sideboard or the maximum number that you currently own. There's also some shortcuts for adding cards to your active trade binder. You can add 1 to your active trade binder, you can add all but 4, or you can add all of the cards that you own. There's also a shortcut for adding any card to your wish list, which is pretty handy. Now if your deck is going to be a tribal deck, or you need to find an equipment, an aura, or even a planeswalker, you can make use of the subtype filter. But if you know the name of the card, it might be a lot easier just to use the text filter at the top and enter the name of the card. These are going to be the filters you're probably going to use most, but the noob is going to talk to you about some of the other filter options you have.
A few other of the filters that we want to mention quickly is the converted mana cost, which is pretty interesting. If you know that you need 5 drops in your deck, you can search for only 5 drops and then it'll help you fill out your curve. Then you have power and toughness. And these are more like, oh, I know it's a 2/3, but I don't remember its name. These will help you out a lot. One of the filters I often use when making a deck is the rarity filter. You could search by common, uncommon, mythic, rare, all those things, and those are really helpful at finding cards fast.
Once you finish your deck, you are now ready to go and play. In the beta, you don't have to worry about saving. It will automatically save for you whenever you make changes. But if you happen to want to make some experimental changes to one of your decks, you can do that simply by right-clicking on the deck and selecting the Open a New Copy of this deck option. And then you can go ahead and use this copy to make modifications. And once you're happy with those modifications, you can right-click on the old deck and select the delete option. But be careful with this because this is permanent. Right-clicking on a deck also exposes a couple of other shortcuts. The export shortcut allows you to turn your deck into a DEK file so you can share it with your friends or post it on the internet. The options shortcut will bring up the deck options window where you can do some useful things to help you tune your deck. First, you can change the settings of your deck, including changing the name of your deck, changing the format for your deck, or changing the deck box for your deck. Next, you can see a sample hand from your deck, which will give you a general idea of the consistency your deck is going to have. You can do things like draw another card, draw another hand, or take a mulligan, which can be useful for tuning your deck. Lastly, there is the analysis tab where statistical information about your deck will be displayed. Things like the number of mana symbols on cards and what your mana curve looks like.
Okay, another important thing is for you to note is that if you don't own all the cards, you'll have to add them to your wish list. You can't play with cards you don't have. I mean, make sure you're aware of that. Even though they give you the option to add them, you still have to purchase them through bots or trade for them, etc. But what's most important about building a deck is really just getting used to it. Once you toy with all the filters, you're going to be way better off. You can add things to your sideboard, to your main deck. You can build decks, and now that you don't have to worry about saving as much, it's a really great upgrade there because I know that in the past when I would look for decks or save decks, they would get lost, and now I'm really happy that I have a visual representation with the deck box in addition to a name, and it looks much smoother because I can't wait to jump into this new beta myself and looks so much nicer. So this has been the MTG Noob,
Cybot.
and in next week's episode for the Noobs, we're actually going to finally play our first game. How exciting.
Woohoo!
Thanks for watching. Please check out the mtgnoob.com.
See you guys next time.